podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Corridos, country and Afrobeats. That is what's been carrying music in 2024.
The King of Podcasts radio network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to episode number 355 of the Broadcasters Podcast, and this is King of Podcasts here with you. Welcoming you post-Halloween. It's another great program. A lot of music news to get into. Just kind of gathering and going through what has been the year of music. We are going to get into that year-end kind of mood pretty soon because media's already kind of taken a bit of a backseat as it is, right? We have movies that are coming up. Quite a few that'll be coming out that we'll talk about probably next week and just kind of run through what is out there that's going to try to put the box office over the top for this year, whether it's Wicked or Mufasa or, pick other movies that are out there. There's Gladiator. There's some movies out there. Red One. There's a few things to go ahead and look at. So we'll look at that next week because obviously October was a very rough year, a rough time for movies. And I haven't talked much about them. I mean, yes, as a Catholic, I'm a bit miffed by the end of the Conclave. I watched that last Friday. And I watched Megalopolis in October. Wow. I watched The Substance in October. Wow. And yeah, among other things, I was really amazed by some of the movies I saw over the fall that were just duds. The Crow. Ooh. I mean, it was fine, but they did not do well. When My Hero Academia, the anime, had a better performance than most of the other movies in October, there's something wrong. All right, so the Billboard Hot 100 period, the charting period for 2024 is now ending as of October 31st or November 1st. Done. The Spotify Wrapped series that we already know is our year-end treat for Spotify users like myself. I look forward to going and seeing what songs were most popular on my list in 2024. That's coming up a little bit later on. The Spotify Wrapped folks have said that is going to be continuing on, that they are not wrapping up the chart year, unlike Billboard. Billboard does it because they're aligning up with their music awards, which really is irrelevant, but they want to do that now. It was much better when they used to do it, where it was the 1st of December. That was the end of the chart year. And then the 1st of December would actually start the next chart year. So the question is going to be, we aren't going to see any new albums of any new particular artists for the rest of the year. Album bombs from any significant artists, we're not going to get those. And that's how it's going to be. I mean, there wasn't that many in the first place here this year anyway. It was treacherous to go and see who was really out there that really made a big difference. Beyonce, Post Malone. Sabrina Carpenter obviously was the whirlwind pop album of the year, along with Chappell Roan. And Taylor Swift putting on another album. And Beyonce with Cowboy Carter. I mean, there's others to put into the mix and explain. But when you look at what the end of year charts have looked like and what the year of the Hot 100 looked like to be the gauge of the mainstream. Again, this is controlling radio airplay, sales, and streaming. Like the BBC Radio official chart show says, all the songs you're listening to, downloading, buying, and streaming. That's what we're following. So 18 number one hits so far to clear out the Hot 100 year of 2024. You had a couple of retreads. So Brenda Lee's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree starts off the year. Lovin' on Me came on the chart. Jack Harlow. Early bit of January, it was a re-entry from January after the Christmas season. And it was on the chart off and on 5 non-consecutive weeks in 2024. So Jack Harlow had that to go work off of, which worked for him. And then you had Megan Thee Stallion's Hiss, which was was just a single that just hit up once and gone. Then you had Ariana Grande's album following up from last year with Yes And, which hit very well. as the first single, and then We Can't Be Friends, Wait for Your Love, which hit number 1 March 23rd. But her album came and went. And a lot of the backlash, I think, from the Wicked production of what she did, possibly rooking a marriage, might have not helped in the process. But she finished the year better for herself because she had a great appearance on Saturday Night Live, which everybody's talking about. It's the raise of her right now. And that the Wicked movie's coming out and Thanksgiving, so she's going to be doing just fine to finish off the year, no matter the controversy. And then, of course, we had all the things that were going on. Well, we had Carnival from Kanye West, Texas Hold'em from Beyonce for 2 weeks, following the Cowboy Carter album coming out. And then Lose Control, Teddy Swims, which is still on the chart now in the top 10. Amazing. Some 7 months later. 7 months later. Then you had April and May, which was consuming the Kendrick Lamar Drake feud. We're going to be doing our best of series here on the program. I don't know if I'm going to do it in Thanksgiving at the end of the month, or if I'm going to do it a little bit earlier. I probably will do it a little bit earlier because we're going to get to that point. I think somewhere around Thanksgiving, we'll take about 5 episodes and go year end, and we'll play clips, and we'll go back and just revisit everything that really became the year of media, because there's a lot. The Kendrick Lamar Drake feud, which consumed, first of all, Future Metro Boomin Kendrick Lamar's single Like That for 3 weeks. Then you had Hozier with Too Sweet, which was for one shot, but also top 10 all across the board for a long time because of the stretch from streaming to radio. Then you have Taylor Swift and Post Malone with Fortnite leading off for her next album that also kicked ass. Then you had Post Malone and Morgan Wallen with his single leading up to his album, F1 Trillion, with I Had Some Help, which hit the chart and stayed there for 6 weeks. And then Please, 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 Sabrina Carpenter, the only song to hit number 1 off of her album, Short and Sweet, even though Espresso and Please, Please, Please and Taste have been consistently somewhere in that top 10 for, it's been months now. Months. Then a bar song, Tipsy, Shabuzi comes in for 1 week, knocked off by Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, which was really the crux and the final blow, the dagger in the Kendrick Lamar Drake feud. And then Shabuzi just goes on a tirade, trying to match up against Lil Nas X and Old Town Road, trying to break the record. I believe at the end of this right now, given all this, he's going to have made it 15 weeks at number 1, almost made it to Despacito level, and One Sweet Day level. Big deal. So weeks at number 1, there you go. Shabuzi with the most number 1 weeks at 15 for the year. Post Malone with 8. Morgan Wallen with 7. So country takes up quite a bit of the chart. And if you look at what we have right now with the other songs that are consuming across the board as it pertains to what's been filling the chart, because when you have that many songs right there to hit number 1, and that's it, 18 artists, and it's not much in there, those songs stretch out throughout the year. Because remember, you're seeing some of these songs initially come in, let's say, after Lovin' On Me, Jack Harlow. It was March that we really started seeing the push for new music. We started seeing albums dropping, new music coming in, and the real bulk of the music starting off right there in March and rolling all the way down to about July. Because there wasn't anything else that could take off Shabuzi. Nothing was taking that off that top of that chart. Not even Down with a Smile, nothing. No Chapel Roan, no Sabrina Carpenter. Shabuzi was it. A testament to what country was this year. We're not even counting. When you look at what normally you would see on the Latin charts, and I look at that a lot, because we talk about that. We've talked about the regional Mexican sound and what that's done. And, I'm really kind of falling back on some of the stories of music I've talked about here on the program on various editions of the program where I've showcased a particular music that's really come up and become very trendy. So we did one on Corridos, and we did one on Afrobeats this year. Those did very well. Actually, Corridos was last year because Peso Pluma was the year for him. But then we have other artists that came up. Luis Enriquez, Fuerza Regida got much bigger this year. Javi came into the play. And, you know, Tito L and all these others now have come into play. So the corridos now have gotten to a point. And what was interesting, too, that I should make a mention of is that radio, after the Peso Pluma part, again, this is 2 years going on. Because El Bahia Sola goes back to 2023. It goes back to almost 2 years ago. But now what has happened is that the folks at SBS Radio, Raul Alarcón, which is the second largest owner of Spanish radio stations around the country, has gone ahead and has decided to go ahead and create a new format, which is a regional Mexican format, which is going to stress on corridos. Obviously, they're going to see now that that is staying on its own, and that's what they're going to plan to do. So that's their plan. And they now have a new plan called La Privada. That's the plan. And so there was an event for Billboard. They had a Latin music event. And on stage, during a conference panel, Raul Alarcón, who's the founder of SBS Radio, Spanish Broadcasting Systems, decided to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to start this up, starting it first basically in a beta format on HD2 signal in Los Angeles. And then it's explained to go into expansion onto FM dials, regular conventional FM dials, very soon. And they'll launch into several markets. So it's going to make radio take a change and kind of do some direction. They're going to go off of that. So there's what you got right there with what we had in the mainstream of music. There has to be something that fills the void. Now, in the UK and the European Union, in Europe itself, there's an association called the IFPI, International Foundation of Phonographic Institute, right? It's represents the recording industry worldwide. They normally do a report every year, 2024. They'll do one for a global music report, giving the whole deal of what the music was and what it entails. Well, in the EU, they already put a report out for that in September. We're going to bring up that now. Because the question is, how much music is coming from the EU and what is really standing out, and how much does America really take into that part as well? So in Europe, music fans have an abundance of diverse music they can enjoy within their countries and globally. In America, there is an early list of estimates as to what songs are going to stand out and become the top 50 songs globally that are going to be the songs that are going to be standing out for the most part, that people are going to go and notice that people are still streaming right now. And you're going to notice that there are still songs that are from other years. People are still going back to back catalogs and listen to music from whatever time. That's an obvious thing. And that radio doesn't have as much of a pull when it comes to the end of the year and what is streaming. But like the streaming totals right now from the IFPI, they have gone through what they're going through right now in terms of what music is globally successful. In the top 50 right now, Someone You Love, Louis Capaldi, which is a 300+ week entrant into the charts, is still listed in this top 50 list. Let's go on current list. Let's go into current music. Eminem and Houdini, obviously Eminem had an album this year, number 48. 693 million streams this year, suspected right now, estimated for the year. My Love, Mine, All Mine, Mitski, 693 million streams. Now, with her, that was a viral song, and it charted very well in Europe, but not so much in the U.S. U.S. it charted, but it didn't make much of a big difference. Carnival, Kanye West, we talked about. Red Rum, 21 Savage, that also listed this year. Yes, and jumps in, number 42. Die With a Smile, with where it is right now, is currently will be a top 40 song for the year. And it's only in a couple of weeks it's been on the chart anyway, which is pretty impressive. You have Illit with Magnetic. So that's K-pop, which I was going to make mention of K-pop in here as well, because those solo artists have now made their way into the charts as well, just getting started. And that's an interesting aspect we're seeing right now, because there's openings for other music to come in. That's the whole point. Karol G has a song that's been charting on the Latin charts for a long time. It just knocked out the top of the charts after, I think, 16 weeks as well. That's Si Antes Te Hubiera Conocido. That just came up, and I think it's just a single. I don't know if it's part of an album. I think it is part of an album, but it was like an album she had this year, but that was a song that really stood out. Travis Scott and Playboi Carti's Fiend, number 28. And you have Dasha with Austin, and that was 29 for the year so far. And talking about a song that did very well in Europe, extremely well for an artist overseas, crossing over. And obviously did well here in the States. And her first debut single for her, really, that people have really heard of. And she's in here, and it's a great thing for her. Then you have La Diabla with Javi, which is at 28. And he comes out of the mix kind of right on the back end of what Peso Pluma launched and broke open for Corridos to be noticed and be recognized. So now other artists are now coming into play, and it looks like Corridos are going to be a constant. It's going to be something new. The other thing we're also noticing too, and I also recognize this as well, there's a different area of music going on right now that the Mexican side, regional Mexican, is expanding. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, going on with this list and moving on from there, you have Love Me Jack Harlow, which would be ending the year 25. Texas Hold'em, Beyonce will be 24. Zach Bryan, Casey McBride, that goes back to last year, but that's still listed here. One of the Girls, The Weeknd, Jenny and Lily Rose Depp, number 20. So in streaming, it dominated, but was never really much a thing on radio. Good Luck Babe for Chappell Roan will land somewhere in the top 20 at 19 on this list. Fortnite, Taylor Swift Post Malone at 18. Joe and the Beginning is at 17. That was quite a song that we had that had a long run and also top 10 stay for quite a while. We started off the year with Stick Season Noah Kahan, rolling into the new year. We Can't Be Friends, Ariana Grande in that streaming list at 15. Greedy, Tate McRae, and Tate McRae had also a tremendous year for herself as well. 14 for that song. Then you had Artemis, I Like the Way You Kiss Me, which hit into the top 20 and dropped off in America, but it dominated in the European Union and all of the world. Sabrina Carpenter, Please 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 is at 12. I Had Some Help, Post Malone, Morgan Wallen's at 11. $1 Million Baby, Tommy Richmond. We have not talked much about Tommy Richmond, but he's had a very good year. Had a couple of songs that really stood out. Put out an album. Album hasn't done so much, but those first two singles that he had, did really well. Cruel Summer, Taylor Swift, because of the crossover, because of the fact that song made it back after being released in 2018. And here we go, or 2019, I think it is. And that song is now a hit in 2024. Also did very well at the start of the year. Not Like Us, Kendrick Lamar also hits in that spot. These are all songs that hit over 1 billion streams, by the way, this year. Hozier Too Sweet at 7. Got the only Floyd Manor and Chris MJ. That was the first song for Floyd Manor that all of a sudden was just a monster reggaeton hit for this year. Billie Eilish had an album this year, and Birds of a Feather is a standout for that, along every other song she had on that album. For the year, Shabuzi's A Bar Song will end up at number 4 on this list with almost 1.5 billion streams worldwide. Teddy Streams Lose Control is number 3. Espresso, Sabrina Carpenter at number 2, which, interesting. Espresso hit number 1 for a long time worldwide, but it did not hit number 1 in the States. It's amazing. And it was also held off by Morgan Wallen, held off by Shabuzi. It's because country was the dominant force here in America, but country dominated on the charts everywhere else as well. We'll talk about that. And Beautiful Things, Benson Boone. That's going to end up probably being the number 1 song on the country for the year 2024. Of every song you have, over 2 billion streams for Beautiful Things. I can't stand the song. I can't stand it. But it's been driven by radio. Radio has put a push on this song, and people can't get enough of it. But I got tired of that song well into, March or April? I just had enough. Couldn't listen to it. So there you go. So throughout our talk about the charts, we've taken quite a bit of time to talk about country. So it's obvious that country in America really has stood out and made a difference. And as we've talked about also, there are a lot of songs that crossed over. And country this year, if it hadn't already become a worldwide phenomenon yet, it really did this time around. And it's also not just because of the, conventional country artists. Obviously, Morgan Wallen, Luke Combs made their marks this year with songs that he put up on the charts. But it's Zach Bryan. Noah Khan got in there. Dasha. And there are some others that also gave a bit of the vibe of country that Post Malone as well. It all changed that. But now for Mexican music, it's also a difference because we have the Corridos Tumbados, the rise of Mexican urban ballads. It's definitely gotten themselves up to a higher level right now. And when you look at some of the artists that are definitely standing out these days in that space, there's Nathaniel Cano, which is a pioneer, being met as one of the creators and leaders of this revolution. And then other artists you see in this same space is Junior H, Gabito Ballesteros, and Peso Pluma, who's a Grammy Award-winning musician now. Spotify is hosting an event on November 2nd and 3rd in Mexico City called the Mezcla Spotify Palenque, Feria y Cotorreo. So they're bringing together all the Mexican music together. One of the areas that has really also made a point to really come out here big is Mexican reggaeton. Reggaeton right now in Mexico has become a thing. I'm hearing it a lot right now, and it's picking up steam all across the Latin America space. So like the Dominicans, they got their dembow, but now they're definitely getting themselves into the Mexican reggaeton. I didn't even realize it was Mexican, but I just knew the reggaeton I was hearing on some of this was definitely a different flavor, but it was kicking ass. I mean, some of the artists we have right now that are coming in that I hadn't even heard before. First of all, in the Corrido space, you get Grupo Firme, Luz Conríquez, Grupo Maga Registrada, La Adictiva, and in the reggaeton area for Mexican, you got Bea Caf, the queen of Mexican reggaeton. You got La Trinidad. I mean, there's Danny Flo. There's all these artists that are working together and putting songs in, and it's an amazing feel to it. But it's definitely stood out, and people are talking about it more and more than ever. And when you see the Latin charts like it is now, you used to see quite a few reggaeton artists that would be dominating on those charts. They've been overshadowed by corridos for the year. And then on the underground part, you have the dembow music, which is also being kind of overshadowed with the reggaeton. And then there's another part where we're seeing the Afrobeats sound, which is resonating across multiple languages, multiple formats. You got EDM music now with Afro House, which is just dominant. Adam Port, great song. Move. It's one of those really dominant songs you had this year. Again, we've had a lot of great artists that have just made their way through. We talked about it earlier this year with Tyler Thames and Arya Starr breaking out with music this year and just rolling up the spot. Incredible. The new R&B, basically, if you got to say it like anything else. Now, we're going to go ahead and focus more on what happened individually, those artists in the best of section when we do it a little bit later on this year. But we're going to move on to some other news that happened over this week. We're going to keep the show kind of short this week. It's just not a whole lot going on, but I wanted to at least make sure to get a show in, even though everybody's all occupied with Halloween. It's fine, whatever. Odyssey. Now, after they'd gotten their bankruptcy approved by the FCC, and they were able to get the help of foreign ownership by the way of Soros Fund Management to help take care of some of their debt, they're now asking for permission to increase their foreign ownership levels, which is going above and beyond what is allowed in their ruling. So they think, well, they got the bankruptcy through. Let's see what else we can get. So the next step in the financial restructuring is at the hands of the FCC. Odyssey has petitioned the FCC to allow it to increase its foreign ownership levels to almost 50%, 49.99%, as several of its new investors plan to convert warrants issued during the earlier approval process to direct equity. Laurel Tree Opportunities, it's a financial firm with ties to billionaire George Soros, will remain the biggest shareholder when the dust settles. They currently hold 64% of the shares, and if the SEC goes along with the next step, Laurel Tree will become the biggest shareholder. Now, at the moment, after bankruptcy is all done, Odyssey is calculating that foreign individuals and entities will hold 27% of the company's equity. That's above the 25% allowed threshold, and the SEC must approve the maneuver before it's executed. But now they're going to ask for it. Let's just not make it 27. They want to be able to offer as much as half of the equity into Odyssey to foreign investors. So now they're talking to having New Jersey-based PGIM, a fixed income fund, acts as an investment advisor and collateral manager on behalf of 45 separate entities that would hold portions of direct interest in Odyssey. Most have ties to the Cayman Islands. If its warrants were exercised, PGIM would hold almost a 5% stake in Odyssey. But as part of the request, Odyssey is asking the FCC to allow the investment firm to raise up to 20% of the investment in the future. So again, to 25%. And pointing out that none of the individuals involved will have any active involvement in the day-to-day operations of or management of Odyssey. You want that much foreign ownership into the second largest radio broadcaster in the country. Because you have to find money somewhere else. That's basically what it is. By permitting foreign ownership in Odyssey to exceed the 25% threshold, the company says it'll give the company flexibility in accessing the capital necessary to remain a competitive radio broadcaster. Yeah, they're not going to do anything more. They're not even going to pay off their debt with this. They're just going to keep themselves afloat with their debt. So reorganization in September was approved and a 3-2 vote by the FCC. I don't know. But they want more foreign ownership. That doesn't sound good. It's desperation. And it's being accepted. And the FCC might actually pass off on it. I can't believe it. Now, when I talk about all the music that has been brought in, that has been very popular this year, and the other music that's out there that could be played, that's being played in Europe and all around the world when it comes to country music or Spanish music or Mexican reggaeton or Afrobeats or whatever, like there's all these other songs to play. But because pop music has to stay within their lane in radio, they're limited. And now there's a problem about when songs should stay into rotation and which ones should be dropped. Sean Ross puts out a great story, moving on or bearing down, when to give up on a song. It wasn't that hard back in the day to know when to do that. So he refers about the stagnation at the top of the charts, the Billboard charts, the release of fewer top 40 radio singles, and a decreased willingness by labels and radio to commit to any song without a streaming story. With many songs taking longer than ever to perform in radio station call-out. Right. Now they're not even taking 12 weeks. They're taking longer. The period between songs tapering off on early streams and justifying their place on the air are harder to negotiate. These aren't the songs that show strength in nearly every metric before radio powers them. At any given time, there are songs like Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars' Down with a Smile, Taste by Sabrina Carpenter, Chappell Roan's Hot to Go, Billie Eilish's Birds of a Feather that quickly became hits in every other meaningful way, and they often get their Billboard Hot 100 trophies quickly. They're established hits regardless of radio's cosign. Then there are the other ones that are out there gaining 150 to 300 spins, which is very little rotation in the whole gamut of things right now for radio. Streaming story might have trailed off. Usually songs with tempo by established artists. And do these songs still have something to offer? Would the spin be better on a newer, more exciting song? Or another spin of beautiful things? Often they're helping create chart gridlock inside of the top 10 that also slows down those songs agreed to be hits. Right. So radio is now responsible for what they're doing to fix this. They are stopping up the traffic. They are creating gridlock. Great point, Sean. Now there's another song. There's another thing that's brought in here where Mason Kelter, who has a Radio Insight column, he's hosted the syndicated Lifeline. He takes issue with stations that are playing mid-charters while not reacting fast enough to other active records. But what about now when there are so few active songs that are consensus hits? Right. Top 40 needs to still build that. That's the whole point. So Mason points around here that there are songs worth considering. And there was a couple of songs that he thought that radio should be taking on top of. And he's trying to go ahead and give the vetting process. He's trying to go ahead and recruit these songs to go on the radio. Gigi Perez and Sailor Song, which is right now a top 3 song in UK and also hitting in other markets in Europe. It's hit. So top 10 on US Spotify for the past 4 weeks. It's a Gen Z anthem. Thanks to TikTok, nostalgic vibe that sounds so similar to a song we wrote about last week, Sweater Weather by The Neighborhood. Only 24 spins on top 40 this week, which came from SiriusXM Hits 1 for 10 spins and 14 spins on KBFF in Portland, an enterprise station. And other requests have come in this week, even though they're not playing it yet. Then you have Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan, number 8 in requests this week. And still not on the top 40 on CHR, but major market airplay has already started with KHKS, Kiss FM in Dallas, WFLZ in Tampa, and WPXY Rochester. I mean, also this part where this is a song that was released as one 4 years ago. And he goes on to talk about that the steady stream of summer's great pop songs has slowed down dramatically, leaving us with a stale top 20 on Spotify and CHR, forcing us to play 7-month-old songs like Espresso, Tipsy, Too Sweet, or stuff that the labels are pushing as hot new songs, but won't be remembered in 6 months. So, what should Top 40 Radio be playing in these times? More golds, the same songs in power? Keeping the categories moving no matter what the media base charts show? What would you be playing if media base didn't exist? And that's what he talked about here. And I'm like, wow, he makes a good point. WPIA's Peoria's Scott Hethcorn. He makes a point that it's interesting once you're getting calls for what the record labels are shoving down our throats. So they're getting a lot of callbacks right now for playing Pink Pony Club and a couple of the tracks on the weekend with Dancing in the Flames or Timeless. So people are listening more for Timeless than Dancing in the Flames. Bedcam by Sabrina Carpenter is also something really big, but radio's not ready to go and pull the plug on it. And the record labels want to push something else. You know, of course, they're not in touch either, and radio is just lucky to be a part of the dance in the secondary market. Let's just put it like that. Back to Sean Ross. Labels are inconsistent when they choose to stay with a song these days. Some fall through songs have been worked to just at the edge of the top 10, but other fast starters just as quickly discard in the top 25 and 30 range as soon as streaming cools. I don't want a song, he says, that is either strong or fresh to stick around for just an extra month just to be a trophy. Then again, with label radio departments under siege, it's harder to begrudge them to the commitment. Yeah, they're worried more about streaming. You know, to chuck and jive and, you know, negotiate to get songs played on radio after they've already gotten past their best value doesn't help. A sharp contrast to country, where some songs still build slowly over the course of a year or more. In the streaming era, the formula has been modified just enough to make country a highly rated format with a mix of active records and those ratified by call-out research over the course of many months. So country still has a way of putting songs out, and they're not looking too bad about it, because their thing is, at least for them, they're actually keeping up with the times. Like, you're not hearing songs that sound way too past its prime, and they're kind of limited on what they can play. Country is a pretty healthy format. Urban stations still have a pretty healthy format when it comes to hip-hop stations for the most part. They don't have to go reliant on too many gold records or too many recurrents. Another song that should be playing on radio right now, but it's not, but it's doing very well on the Billboard chart. I think it's number 13 this week. And in the UK, it was near top 10, is The Door by Teddy Swims, the follow-up. And again, there's also Bad Dreams you can be playing by Teddy Swims, but they're not playing that either. But at the moment, The Door is working for smaller outlets that are enterprise, WIXX Green Bay, WAEZ in Johnson City, Tennessee, and a song where radio could drive streaming. And SiriusXM got behind The Door, which has gone from 2 million on-demand weekly streams in the U.S. to nearly 7 million. So there are those that are championing a record like that, but they're few and far between. And there are some stations that are still trying to go ahead and go enterprise, trying to buck the system. So KMVQ 99.7 now in San Francisco is one of the most successful CHRs in recent years. They still are displaying significant music enterprise. So 2024 has manifested itself in a top 10 mostly made up of Carpenter and Rowan, but also they played Unwritten by Natasha Billingfield because of the Anyone But You movie that came over earlier in the year, or moving the weekend's popular back into significant rotation several times. So the PD there, Jim Archer, says the audience always appreciates a fresh song. The problem is if the radio station plays it too often or too long after it's obvious the song isn't special enough to cut through. Freshness must always be a part of any contemporary station. So Sean Ross is asking, if Top 40 should return to its long abandoned model of turning over a lot of songs, knowing that most of them, even the biggest smashes, will only last 8 to 10 weeks, as they did for the first 20 years of format. Yes. Sink or swim. We should get back to that again. They should take songs that are streaming, and if they don't do well, drop them off. I agree with that completely. I think Sean Ross makes the exact point here. So when he says that seeing what sticks might seem like an insult to a label's commitment or an act's artistry, it's exactly what labels are doing for TikTok or DSPs. At this point in the troubled radio label relationship, there's just no incentive to do the same for radio. In another case, okay, Gracie Abrams has a couple songs right now that are doing really well. I Love You, I'm Sorry. Top 10 song in Europe. But now it's like, okay, Close to You is also going to be in there for tempo and artist image. You could also put that in there as well. I bring it to light because streaming is doing pretty well for her. He goes on to close out saying that through much of the decade, program directors tried to reassert themselves that shorter playlists and glacial turnover were the will of an audience that no longer expected music discovery from radio. Wrong. I talked about that several weeks here on the program about new music discovery still needing to happen. But program directors, I can't blame them. It's the corporations they work for. Let's be honest here. That's to them. Perhaps new music is important to everybody's strategy. Meanwhile, if radio's overall timing gets better, I'm less likely to begrudge a song that merely sounds good on the radio for a few extra weeks. They need to do that. They got to take chances on some songs. It's not hard. Listen, this is not like what it used to be where they had to go and just trust the labels for it. If it's streaming well, play it. It's not that hard. Just saying. An interesting panel that came out called the Grill 2024. And at this event, industry veteran, Jeff Sagansky, was rebuking the Hollywood studios for decisions leading to the unbelievable cataclysm in the business. So the transformative shift caused by the end of TV profits and the rise of streaming ambitions. So roughly 4 years later, since the pandemic, when the investment and the transition into streaming from network came full circle. So all that money being put into content, what has it gotten everybody at the end, and what has it done right now in terms of eroding the network TV model, and at the same time also playing into a very crowded streaming market. So Sagansky took Hollywood to task for decisions. He did a keynote interview at the Raps Grill Conference this week, and he says that you're seeing the traditional business collapse. At the same time, you're seeing all this predatory behavior from the streamers, and two of them together are causing unbelievable cataclysm in the business that we both love. He accuses Hollywood's traditional studios of accelerating the decline of linear television, abandoning programming and choosing streaming platforms, which led to predatory behavior from streamers. He says it's still a $150 billion value business in terms of revenues, and much like the sports industry, this live sports, they represent alone a $40 billion business, much smaller by contrast. He also thinks that the four leading streamers, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, Hulu, and Max, would form an entertainment oligopoly that is likely to draw scrutiny from government regulators. Yeah, they're going to be the top four. There's going to be consolidation. Deregulation is already in place, so they can continue to do that. He also says a total highlighted loss of $190 billion in value of the stock prices of major entertainment companies like Warner Brothers Discovery, Disney, and Paramount, noted that television, traditional driver of the entertainment industry for half a century, has almost lost half of its audience. So he is sounding the bell for mainstream corporate media failing. We already know that the news media has already been hurting. But now we're seeing the same thing here for the major broadcasters here when it comes to streaming and the networks and the cable offerings. Peter Gruber, another Hollywood veteran and CEO of Mandalay Entertainment, also co-owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, says that amid mass layoffs, steep cuts in production, and an anxious search for streaming profitability, there's more uncertainty in Hollywood than ever. Quote, there will be blood, just like the movie, but there will also be opportunity. Don't give up on entertainment. It's been around for thousands of years. It's not going to go away in 2025. And Sagansky talks about that he's amazed at how entertainment companies got to this point when they pushed their film and TV libraries to Netflix in response to the decline of the DVD market in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Quote, when streaming starts, people have a choice they can make. And they make it. So what does cable do? They raise the prices. They produce less programming at a time when the building was on fire. They just looked at their cash cow and said, okay, it's over. And that was a fundamental mistake. Correct. Goober says, you don't have to find your way through to be active in your own rescue. Don't just wait for the government to give you a clear path. Create your own path. If you don't, you'll be on the dustbin of history. Yeah, they got to compete against the internet. They're competing against influencers. They're competing against various other mediums or media that's out there. Look, for live content, it doesn't even have to be scripted. People have YouTube. Now Kick is becoming a big thing. Twitch, X, Rumble, all these places. They also discussed the impact of artificial intelligence on filmmaking, whether it would expand or curtail opportunities for filmmakers. So yeah, that's amazing. But they're both right about it. They have let things go by the wayside. It sucks. And it's a shame that it's happened like this, but we talked about this in 2010. We were very clear about it. We knew it was going to happen. I mean, listen, all you have to do is listen to this podcast, and you're going to basically hear, tomorrow's news today, basically. Because I stay up on this right here. The digital disruption is real, and it continues to go ahead and wreak havoc on traditional media. They're all making mistakes. And much like radio, they're not listening to the music that's out there and giving it a chance. Come back for another Broadcasters podcast next week. Remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.